most Canadian thing I've ever done is...
The most Canadian guitar riff, I would have to say,
I think the most Canadian snack has to be...
Is the most Canadian sound, and I always think of Canada when I hear that.
So how often have you been asked today, especially today, what defines us? And what's our national identity? Too often, maybe? Well, we're not going to ask. We already know, because this is the most Canadian radio show in the world. My name is Denis Grignon, and over the next hour, we're going to celebrate and debate just what deserves the title of most Canadian in a whole bunch of categories. First up, the most Canadian giant thing. In fact, if you're driving right now, I bet there's some kind of huge attention-getting something just up the road.
Hi, this is Valerie from Duncan, British Columbia, where we are home of the most Canadian giant thing ever, the world's largest hockey stick. Come on, it doesn't get more Canadian than that.
Hi, my name is Francois Weber, calling from Prince Edward Island, and I think the most Canadian giant thing is our giant potato, located at the Canadian Potato Museum here on the island. Because when the sun hits just right, it looks exactly like Stephen Harper doing an imitation of Brian Mulrooney.
End of message.
Steve from Toronto, and I think the most giant Canadian thing that there is probably the CN Tower. It's big, it's got the letter C for Canada on it, and it turns colors to celebrate all things Canadian, especially on Canada Day.
My name is Paula Zinnick, and I am from Edmonton, Alberta, originally Saskatoon. Woohoo, go Riders! One of them is in Mundare, Alberta, which is home of the world's largest kubasa or sausage. As well, we have a lovely Vegreville, Alberta, home of the world's largest, at least I hope it is, Pisanka or Ukrainian Easter egg. Very important, large Ukrainian items in Canada.
Yeah, that most Canadian category really does touch a personal chord with me. You see, as a stand-up comedian, I've been to many of the smaller dots on our map, but also some of the bigger attractions, literally bigger. Maybe it's because I'm 6'5", but I love giant stuff. I'd wake up early the morning after a gig in somewhere Canada, ask the front desk person at the hotel how to find the enormous whatever in their town, and then I'd hike, bike, or drive to it. And I always had a giant smile on my face as I approached it. It still happens, like I'm some kind of explorer who just happened upon a new discovery. I have years worth of photos of me with giant things. Go to our Most Canadian Facebook page and you'll see me planted in front of a big baseball, wheat stalks, a coffee pot, a bison, a lumberjack, even a gorilla. So what's the deal with our big attraction to big things? I posed that question to Ken Martineau after he rode up on his motorcycle in front of the giant loonie at Echo Bay, just outside of Sault Ste. Marie.
I guess it's because Canada is so huge, you know.
So by comparison, this is small.
Exactly.
So we need things big to stand out amongst
I suppose, yeah. That'd be a good analogy. I was up in Nipigon, and they have a big trout, I do believe.
Yeah, the loonie's large, but if you want to see the most Canadian giant thing, you got to get to Wawa in Ontario's north.
Well, its wingspan is 48 feet wide.
Oh, we are talking birds, so okay, wingspan,
yeah,
48,
wingspan.
Okay.
So, and he weighs several tons.
Specifically, get to the goose, giant goose, which is where I met Laurie Johnson, who's with Wawa's tourism office.
Why the goose in Wawa?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Wawa...
You know that sounds like a country song, Why the Goose in Wawa.
I know. The goose is actually, in Ojibwe, Wawa means wild goose. And so when the Trans-Canada Highway was being built, it was actually quite a struggle to get the link from Sault Ste. Marie up to Wawa. It took a lot of years, and the people in Wawa lobbied and lobbied really hard. In fact, there was 4 gentlemen from Wawa that actually walked to Sault Ste. Marie through the bush to prove that they could actually make a highway through there. And finally, the government agreed. So when all the plans were said and done, the local businessmen were disappointed because the highway was actually going to bypass the business core of Wawa by about a mile. So Al Turcott, he was a local entrepreneur. his idea was, let's build this giant goose and put it right at the highway, and people will have to stop in Wawa.
To see, people want to see the goose.
Exactly.
That was the attraction.
That was the attraction. Now, everybody in town thought he was crazy. And even the Chamber of Commerce wouldn't, go with him on this idea. So he financed the first one himself. And the Department of Highways put the base here, this big cement base that you see, and he commissioned, somebody from British Columbia that did all of the dinosaurs in the park there to build the first goose. And it's at Young's General Store. You can see it sitting there. Our goose has had about 50 years standing there, and you can see is kind of felt the weather and needs to be replaced. It's made out of steel, so...
Algoma steel, from what I understand, too.
Yes, exactly, Algoma steel. And it's built as one piece, so it's at the point now where we can't really repair it. We do have to replace it, so that's what we're looking at doing.
Would you feel that this is the most Canadian giant thing?
Well, I would feel that way. I mean, it's a Canada goose. How much more Canadian do you get? The goose is definitely the most Canadian, for sure.
Hi, my name is James Cunningham. I'm the host of Eat Street on the Food Network, and I believe the most Canadian sound is the sound of a deep fryer, because that's the sound of poutine being made.
My name's Jay Nutt. I'm originally from just outside Edmonton, Alberta. The most Canadian sound that I can think of is a prairie thunderstorm in the summertime. When you live on the prairies, you can see the storm coming, you can see the lightning, you can count the time lapse down, and when that thunder hits, it's a deep sonic boom. You feel it in your guts.
Hi, this is Bridget Whalen calling from Frelicksburg, Quebec, and the most Canadian guitar riff is Cinnamon Girl by Neil Young.
My name is Alan McLaren. I met Bruce Coburn when I was 13 at Dominic's Academy of Music on Carling and Broadview area, which was close by Bruce's high school, Nepean High School in the Ottawa area, and he took time to talk to me, so that was kind of cool.
So that's why it's your most Canadian guitar riff?
And that is why it's my most favorite Canadian guitar riff, yes, Bruce Coburn's Tokyo.
Next message.
Hi, this is Stephen Fearing calling in from Halifax, Nova Scotia. I would like to nominate the riff for Running Back to Saskatoon by the Guess Who as the most Canadian guitar riff. And you can't really get more Canadian than the Guess Who, and this is perhaps one of their best. Running back to Saskatoon.
We'll talk about riffs in the second half of the most Canadian radio show in the world on CBC Radio One and Sirius XM. Sorry. Eating while talking, that is so rude. You know what really got people talking, though? When we asked them about truly Canadian snacks. Like these ketchup chips, maybe. But really, what's the most Canadian snack?
Might as well just deal with the elephant in the room. This has come up with so many comments. People have written in, have told us. It's poutine.
Poutine was definitely right up there.
How do you feel about it?
You know, I think really good poutine is a wonderful thing, but there are some really, really bad examples of poutine out there.
Oh, no kidding.
But poutine is not Jennifer McKenzie's choice for most Canadian snack. I met the recipe developer and chef at the Nutshell Next Door Cafe in Lakefield, Ontario, where she cooked up her top choice right before my eyes and nose.
Which we all call pea meal bacon, but they can't call it bacon because bacon is typically smoked.
Oh.
So this one is not smoked, so it's technically pickled. So it's a brine cure, and it's the loin. So it's what you would find in pork chops.
Okay, well, do your magic. I want to see you create the most Canadian snack in your opinion. A little portable stove here.
Little portable. We've got a burner. And our big frying pan. You want a big frying pan? You can do it in the oven. You can do it on the barbecue grill because that's very Canadian too. You just want to cook the pea meal real quick. And as soon as you start heating up that oil and you sizzle that bacon in, and everybody comes running, even if they were sound asleep. There's such little fat actually in the loin that it will stick. So I just put oil in the very first time. You don't need it after. But see, there's only a tiny bit around the edges. And the loin is really quite lean, so you don't want it to stick and then all be shredded on your pan.
Gotcha.
You want it in on the bun. flip it over another few seconds. That's it.
And that's it. So
That's it.
That's just a plain pea meal sandwich.
Plain
no
pea meal sandwich. We've
no
got it.
avocado slices. Nothing like that.
No, don't do the avocado. I have to admit, I like a little honey mustard myself, and our good Canadian mustard. We like sweet, super sweet. Definitely the Quebec and the East Coasters, and then we like vinegary. Now, some people go for a crusty bun, but for me, it has to be squishy. There we go.
Look at
And
Okay.
the classic
Whoa.
pea meal on a bun, all Canadian.
Well, I'm a big pork guy to begin with.
Classic au naturel pea meal on a bun.
Pea meal on a bun is this chef's choice, but there's a lot of competition for title of most Canadian snack.
Chris, I had no idea you were in Lakefield. How fortuitous is this? How are you, Chris?
I'm great, Denis. How are you?
I'm quite well. We're debating here what the most Canadian snack is. And I should ask you, I mean, you're someone who's...
I lay out a number of contenders for Chris Waters to test at the Nutshell Next Door Cafe, like ketchup chips, cheesies, Jennifer's classic butter tarts, and that pea meal on a bun, as well as what Chris ultimately chose as his most Canadian snack.
I've had the ketchup chips before. They were a favorite of mine in childhood, Denis, and
okay.
I leaned to them.
Okay.
You know, your tastes become more refined. Let's move on to the cheesies.
Okay. Do you want to open that up? You want a little piece of bread, maybe to cleanse your palate before you move on?
I think I'll try some good Canadian coffee to cleanse my palate.
Okay.
That is that cheese, that cheddar cheese. That faux cheddar cheese is a very Canadian taste. I'll tell you. Back bacon sandwich, I see it more as a meal, but it's definitely Canadian. The butter tart, I like them. I don't know a lot of people who do, but it is kind of a uniquely Canadian thing. All these other processed snacks. Let's face it. I think Canadians eat a lot of processed snacks. We're in our cars and we're on the go, and we like to be able to rip open a bag of something and eat it. Well, I wouldn't really comment on the taste of them. I just think they're very Canadian because I think a lot of people eat them. Kind of campy Canadian, but that's a tough call. I think I'm going to stick with the Joe Louis, Denis. I think that's the most Canadian snack.
Yeah, I was certainly raised on Joe Louis, if in fact you can be raised on them. If I'd grown up out west instead of Cornwall, Ontario, though...
My name is Raymunda St. Augustine, and I live in West Bank, BC, and I work at Kukuli Cafe. I'm the manager here.
I might have been big on bannock as my most Canadian snack. It's hearty, doughy. It can be sweet or savory. You can put it on a stick over a campfire.
We do like decorated bannocks, such as the maple walnut bannock that you had.
Yeah,
and we also do cream cheese and score, a Saskatoon cream cheese icing. We also have one called the Ogopogo, which is a chocolate hazelnut cream cheese icing and all of the icings we do in-house. And it's also the base to your Indian tacos.
Your Indian tacos?
Yeah, the Indian tacos, what it is a bannock that they use as a base. And then they put some, homemade chili over top of it and, lettuce and salsa and sour cream and cheddar cheese.
How would you argue that this is the most Canadian snack food above all else?
Well, I would have to say that it's because, First Nations people, they were, here, right? And they've been here for hundreds of years, and bannock has just been around for that long, right?
I left the kitchen at this point and found 3 Kukulu customers indulging in, well, bannock, of course.
Any other food that I can think of, you can kind of trace back to somewhere else, but bannock is purely Canadian.
That's exactly the argument I would make as well.
I remember making it at the Multicultural Center in Stony Plain when I was like in the 2nd grade, and they taught us how to do it.
On the stick?
Yeah, on the stick, exactly. Yeah, doing that on the stick over the fire.
So it's kind of like you learn it growing up, and it's just always something you know about. But you go anywhere else in the world, and they're like, "What do you mean? What's bannock?" So
maybe that's what makes it the most Canadian
I think
food.
that is exactly
If
it.
you go somewhere else in the world, and they go, "What?"
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we drove all the way from Kamloops today just to come to this restaurant so we could
Really?
have bannock.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we drove 2 hours just for this.
Just for the bannock.
Okay. You know you're Canadian when you drive two hours for snack food. Thank you.
So what's the most Canadian snack? Pea meal on a bun, bannock, or Joe Louis? We'll leave this one up to you and your taste buds. You're listening to the most Canadian radio show in the world on CBC Radio One and Sirius XM.
message.
Hi, my name is Frederick Sayre. I'm calling from Montreal, and I believe the most Canadian sound is skates on ice. That's because back in the winter of 1969, I was a 7-year-old boy who had just moved to Sydney, Nova Scotia, with his family from the south of France. And on one particularly cold December afternoon of that year, I first donned a pair of skates, wore a hockey stick, and I learned to play hockey on an outdoor rink. Today, I'm 50 years old, and I still play in several ice hockey leagues here in Montreal, and the sound of skates on ice still brings me back to that special afternoon back in 1969 when I propped myself up on a hockey stick and I embraced all that is Canadian, hockey and winter. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joanna Dawson, calling from Winnipeg, Manitoba, originally from St. John's, Newfoundland, and I want to nominate the mosquito as the most Canadian sound. There's nothing more Canadian than the annoying buzz of a mosquito as you try to enjoy a family barbecue or a day at the beach, or even as you try to catch a few Z's at night. So the mosquito definitely gets my vote for the most Canadian sound. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Daryl. I grew up in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and I believe one of the most Canadian sounds there is the sound of waves crashing. Whether it be at a lake or the ocean, we will spend hours stuck in traffic as Canadians just to get to the beach so we can be close to waves. We love waves so much that even while we're at the beach, we're planning our winter trip to a tropical island so we can enjoy more waves. Actually, now that I think about it, the most Canadian sound might be the sound of an all-inclusive resort. But in the background, there's still waves. So there you go. All-inclusive waves, I think, is the most Canadian sound there is. Thanks a lot, and a happy Canada Day to everybody.
Who needs a resort when you've got this game?
Good shot. So that gives me an opportunity for the middle. Good shot.
That's the sound of the most Canadian parlor game. And sorry, we're not even opening this up for discussion. It's crokinole. We headed to Tavistock, Ontario to take in the World Crokinole Championship.
Second prize in the doubles, John Conrad and Tony Snyder. Second prize is $200.
My name is Nick Olson. I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan. I personally can't think of any more Canadian parlor game than crokinole. Characters that show up seem pretty Canadian to me.
Maybe you just know it as that round game with a hole in the middle and there are these pegs and you flick these little discs in that hole. You know, that game behind the couch at that cottage. To learn more about crokinole, we went to Stratford, Ontario to meet Wayne Kelly. Well, that's his given name.
I'm sometimes known as Mr. Crokinole.
Wayne's as welcoming and Canadian as he is passionate about crokinole.
Have you eaten, or
we're
would,
fine,
you care,
thank
would
you.
you care for a drink at all?
That is very kind of you.
Guys, there's some fresh, whole, hand-squeezed lemonade. Would you like a glass?
Wayne's home, Mr. Crokinole's home, is a shrine to the game. A basement full of new and antique boards for sale, crokinole books everywhere, including the ones he wrote, boxes of discs, they're also called biscuits or pucks or bonhommes in my family, and an old board converted into a coffee table.
So this board, actually was made in 1892. It was distributed by the Eaton's Company. Maybe you're too young to remember the Eaton's Company.
So it's no surprise what he believes is our true national game.
Hockey, forget about it. Crokinole is by far the most popular game and has been over the years because it was accessible to males, females, young, old. A 6-year-old child could play with his 96-year-old great-grandmother, and they could both have fun. In some cases, on many of the old boards, there would be scores written. July 3rd, 1932, Bob, 25 points. Oh, scribbled into it with pen or a nail or something. Lipstick I've seen. So a broad variety of ways of keeping track.
But how does that make it inherently Canadian? Those are all things we can find in any other country. What is it about this board that just, to you, screams Canada, that you would claim it's the most Canadian parlor game?
I think our climate had a lot to do with it. The fact that many of us lived in a rural atmosphere, not connected with an awful lot of urban settings, perhaps, except for the odd trip a couple of times a year. And the crokinole board invariably was taken out when you left your home to another person's home or to a function.
They carried it literally on their back?
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Look how heavy it is.
In
This
their
has
arms.
got to be what, at least 10, 15 pounds?
Yeah, this is about 17 pounds. It was a catalyst that brought people together. It didn't matter who they were. People could sit down together and socialize with a crokinole board.
Good
shot.
Well, if you need more proof that this is the most Canadian parlour game, the crokinole board comes in one of two founding shapes, a circle or octagon. Think of it like the federal government establishing the basics, a round playing area with concentric circles, 4 individual shooting areas, a hole in the center ringed by a bunch of pegs. But as for the way the game is played, you know the rules? Well, they vary all over the country. Quite a bit like a certain northern nation whose birthday is today, don't you think? How much more Canadian can you get? All right, how about this?
Pete Zosky in '88 that hung me with the expression Mr. Crokinole.
Oh.
And actually he was responsible for the Crokinole book, the first publication I wrote on the game. Peter and I played a number of times together, and I enjoyed the opportunity to meet him.
The music you're hearing is the Crokinole Rag, written and performed by Mr. Crokinole himself, Wayne Kelly. After the break, the most Canadian radio show in the world on CBC Radio One and Sirius XM picks a winning guitar riff. Plus, we'll look at something extremely Canadian, our third official language. I'll give you a hint. Ça va être bien du fun, eh? And what's the most Canadian thing you've ever done? We'll play our 5 finalists in this category and go to an expert to help us crown a winner. And we had a lot of entries worthy of honorable mentions.
I like canoeing on the Yukon River. And I like canoeing to Fort Selkirk. And it's a historic community, historic place on the Yukon River that you can only get to by boat. Well, yeah, and I taught myself how to yodel between Minto and Fort Selkirk.
The most Canadian thing I've ever done, I remember being out in the boat, it was cold, it was windy, and it was snowing, and I remember distinctly thinking at that moment, this is the most Canadian I've ever felt in my entire life, and it was awesome. Thought those exact words when I was in a boat in the snow, canoeing around.